We've been taught that motion means survival, that to keep moving is to stay alive. We sprint toward progress, pile on plans, measure ourselves by momentum. But what if the very movement we celebrate is what's preventing us from evolving? Stillness isn't failure. It's where clarity begins. Beneath all the noise, beneath the mental scramble and emotional noise, is a silent space. And in that space, we meet the truth we keep running from. In a hyper-reactive world, stillness feels dangerous, but often what we call urgency is simply unexamined fear. Panic disguised as power. Action taken not from center, but from desperation. Hyper-reactivity fools us. We confuse it with strength, with decisiveness. But it's often the loudest people who are most afraid to sit still with themselves. Because stillness strips away the mask. It reveals what's beneath the performance. Real adaptation, the kind that doesn't just adjust but transforms, begins in stillness. Not in frozen passivity, but in the courage to pause, observe, and align. To be still is to stop reacting long enough to ask, is this truly me or just a habit? Is this movement growth or a distraction? This is the paradox. Stillness births real movement. Not chaotic motion, but clean direction. Stillness creates space, and space allows choice. We don't change by speeding up. We change by seeing clearly. We evolve not by adding more, but by listening more deeply. To pause is not to fall behind. It's to step out of the noise and into yourself. That self is not in a rush. It is waiting, quietly, beyond the panic. And it knows the way forward. Resistance doesn't shout. It whispers. It appears as overthinking, procrastination, perfectionism, or clinging to what's familiar. But at its root, resistance is fear, not of failure, but of transformation. Deep down, we're not afraid things won't work out. We're afraid we'll be required to become someone new. Carl Jung called this confrontation with the unknown self the shadow, the parts of us we've exiled in order to be accepted, to feel in control, to stay safe. But what we exile doesn't disappear. It waits. It strengthens in the dark. What we avoid begins to animate our lives from behind the curtain. The repressed doesn't die. It directs. This is why resistance feels so strong. It's not just about change. It's about the survival of an identity. And that identity, even if painful, is familiar. It's the devil we know. The more we resist our discomfort, the more tangled in it we become. The more we avoid truth, the more it shapes us in shadow. Internal resistance creates friction, not the creative kind, but the kind that locks us into loops. We relive old arguments in new relationships. We recreate past disappointments in fresh circumstances. The stagnation isn't situational, it's psychological. This is how people stay stuck while looking busy. They change their routines, their environments, even their partners, but the self they bring to each remains unchanged. To evolve, we must do what resistance fears most, witness it without flinching. This isn't about shaming resistance. It once protected you, but now it might be imprisoning you. Adaptation begins the moment we stop fighting ourselves and start getting curious instead. When we say, "What am I afraid will happen if I change? Who am I protecting by staying the same?" In that space of inquiry, resistance softens. And where resistance softens, movement returns. We crave control not because we're powerful, but because we're afraid. Afraid of chaos, of loss, of uncertainty. So we build systems, plans, checklists, routines. Not because they guarantee safety, but because they simulate it. Control promises protection. It tells us that if we just organize hard enough, predict far enough, and prepare thoroughly enough, we won't have to face collapse. But this illusion comes at a cost. Rigidity. The more we try to control, the more brittle we become. When the unexpected arrives, as it always does, we crack. Our nervous systems aren't trained for surprise, they're trained for symmetry. And so anything unpredictable becomes a threat. That's why safety, when built on control, is temporary. It's a house of glass. True strength is not found in control, it's found in flexibility. Flexibility is what allows us to adapt when life doesn't follow the script. It's not the absence of structure, but the ability to move within and beyond it. Flexibility says, I can let go of the plan if the moment demands it. It says, I can soften without collapsing. I can bend without breaking. Adaptation isn't reaction, it's presence in motion. So ask yourself, am I organizing my life to feel safe or to stay alive? Am I confusing control with capability? Because real safety doesn't come from predicting the world. It comes from trusting yourself to meet it, no matter how it shows up. And that kind of trust, the kind that steadies you when the floor drops, only begins where control ends. We live in a culture where performance is currency. We curate images, measure our worth by engagement, and present ourselves in ways designed to generate approval. But this comes at a cost. The more we perform, the more distant we become from what is real. Performance is about appearance. Presence is about essence. One seeks validation, the other seeks truth. Modern life rewards the mask. You can be praised for confidence while drowning in anxiety. You can be visible everywhere, yet feel profoundly unseen. When performance becomes habitual, we forget who we are underneath it. And yet, we adapt to what we rehearse. We adapt to being liked, needed, admired, even if it costs us our center. The true danger is this. When survival depends on performance, authenticity begins to feel like risk. Presence asks something radically different. It doesn't require an act, it requires attention. It asks you to listen more than speak, to feel instead of filter, to meet the moment instead of managing how you look inside it. Adaptation begins not with what you present to others, but with what you're willing to face within. Presence is the ground from which real change can grow, because it is the only place where you are actually in contact with life. So the question becomes, do you want to be seen, or do you want to be known? Most of us were never taught how to feel without drowning. We either suppress emotions or get swept away by them. We confuse feeling with becoming, as if anger means we are angry or sadness means we are broken. But there is a space between the emotion and the self, a space we rarely enter. And in that space lies freedom. The first step toward internal liberation is observation, not control, not suppression, just watching, noticing without judgment. You don't stop the storm, you step back far enough to see its shape. When you observe emotion without becoming it, you create distance. And distance doesn't mean detachment, it means clarity. It means you are no longer possessed by what moves through you. I feel sadness is not the same as I am sad. The first invites reflection, the second locks you into identity. This naming, this gentle witnessing, softens emotion. It reshapes the way it lives inside you. What you can name, you can navigate. Presence turns emotion into information. It becomes something you work with, not something that works you. Adaptation requires emotional fluency, and emotional fluency begins with this question. Can I feel this fully without becoming it entirely? In that question lies the path to both resilience and change. Because when you can feel without fusing, you can move through anything without losing yourself along the way. Letting go is not a failure of effort. It's a declaration of inner strength. But in a world that glorifies control, surrender often looks like weakness. We're praised for holding on even to what hurts us. We're told that endurance is virtue, even when what we're enduring is our own stagnation. The truth is this: letting go is not giving up, it's giving space. It's clearing the cluttered table of identity, expectation, and control so something new can emerge. Detachment isn't indifference, it's alignment. It's the quiet courage to say, I will no longer grip what's out of rhythm with who I'm becoming. When you let go of outcomes, you return to intention. When you release your grip on the past, you re-enter the present. When you stop clinging to how it should be, you finally meet what is. Letting go creates space, and space is where transformation happens. Not by force, but by unfolding. Not by chasing, but by allowing. Adaptation depends on this act, releasing the outdated, the over-identified, the dead weight of what once served you, but no longer does. Like a snake shedding its skin, like breath after constriction. What you hold onto out of fear becomes your boundary. What you release in trust becomes your horizon. So the question isn't, should I let go? The real question is, what might become possible if I do? The mind is not a stone, it's a stream. But most people treat their thoughts as fixed structures, unquestionable, immovable, absolute. This is where suffering begins. Neuroscience has a name for the brain's changeability: neuroplasticity. It means our thought patterns are not permanent, they are habits. And habits can be rewired. Every time we think the same thought, we reinforce the same neural pathway. Over time, those pathways become highways. They feel like truth, but they're just repetition. This is how beliefs become identity. Not because they are essential to who we are, but because they've been rehearsed for so long, we've forgotten how to question them. Mental rigidity is not maturity. It's a defense mechanism, one that often masquerades as confidence. Real wisdom doesn't sound like, "That's just how I am." It sounds like, "Maybe there's another way to see this." Flexibility is not indecision. It's the ability to hold space for multiple perspectives, to evolve your thinking as your context changes. Emotionally mature people aren't those with perfect control. They're the ones who can update their beliefs without shame, who can break loops without breaking down, who understand that unlearning is as powerful as learning. Adaptation, then, becomes an act of conscious rewiring, not of pretending, but of participating in your own transformation. You are not stuck, you are practiced, and what is practiced can be repatterned. We spend so much energy trying to silence fear, bury shame, and outrun doubt, as if they're intrusions on our progress. But what if they're invitations, not obstacles, but openings? Fear isn't always a signal to stop. Sometimes it's a sign you're touching something true. Shame doesn't always mean you're broken. Sometimes it means you're breaking out of the identity that was never yours to begin with. The shadow, as Jung described it, is the unconscious part of the self we reject. It holds all the traits we disown: aggression, ambition, vulnerability, desire, not because they're evil, but because we were taught they were unacceptable. But what we exile doesn't disappear. It festers, it twists, it takes control in secret ways. The more we avoid it, the more it drives us. This is the paradox. What we disown directs us. Integration is the antidote. To turn toward the shadow is to reclaim energy we've spent suppressing. It is to say, I see you, I know you're part of me, and I choose to work with you, not against you. Adaptation becomes powerful when it includes all of you, not just the parts you approve of. Creative evolution comes not from self-perfection, but from self-integration. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole by embracing what was once split, the light and the dark, the calm and the chaos, the strength and the softness. The shadow doesn't block your path, it is the path. And when you stop resisting it, you stop resisting your own transformation. Adaptation is not just a mindset, it's a posture, a rhythm, a way of being that is felt as much as it is chosen. You've heard the words, let go, stay present, soften your grip. But how do they look in motion? How does a person move through the world when they're living from adaptability, not rigidity? They move like a river, flowing around obstacles rather than crashing into them. They adjust course without drama. They don't force, they respond. They move like a dancer, attuned to the shifts in tempo, in tune with their surroundings, but anchored in their own balance. They don't need the floor to stay still in order to stay centered. They move like breath, expanding and contracting, always in dialogue with what is. Never holding too long, never rushing ahead. Just enough, just now. Embodying adaptation means learning to read the moment instead of trying to rewrite it. It means trusting that flexibility is not the absence of direction, it's the presence of intelligence. When you live this way, your identity becomes less of a script and more of a sensing tool. You stop asking, "Who should I be?" and begin asking, "What is this moment asking of me?" Adaptation isn't something you do, it's something you become. Not perfectly, not permanently, but rhythmically. You stop needing to master life. You start dancing with it. Identity protects us. It gives shape, definition, a place to stand. But like armor, what once kept us safe eventually becomes too tight. And growth demands we outgrow who we used to be. Every stage of transformation comes with a shedding. We're not just learning, we're unbecoming. Letting go of roles, masks, and stories that no longer reflect the truth inside us. We often mistake identity for essence, but much of who we think we are is just a collection of responses to old wounds, inherited beliefs, and societal expectations. Useful at the time, but outdated now. To adapt is to allow the self to dissolve, not into nothing, but into something deeper, more fluid, more real. This death is not annihilation, it's initiation. It's the act of dying before you die, the spiritual process of surrendering your false self so your deeper self can emerge. And this death takes courage, because to let go of who you've been, you must risk not knowing who you're becoming. You must walk through the space between identities, the threshold, and trust that something more honest will meet you there. This is not a clean process. It's messy, emotional, sacred, and necessary. If you want to adapt in a way that transforms, not just survives, then you must be willing to release the version of you built for an older life. You don't lose yourself in this death. You recover the parts that were always true, but buried beneath who you thought you had to be. Adaptation is not about flinching faster. It's about responding deeper. Not about reacting to survive, but aligning to evolve. We've spent so much of life on autopilot, triggered, defensive, exhausted, trying to keep up with a world that rarely pauses. But evolution doesn't happen in haste. It happens in awareness. To adapt in a meaningful way is to stop defaulting to survival mode and begin creating from intentional presence. You shift from, "What do I need to defend?" to, "What do I choose to embody?" This is the shift from reaction to responsiveness. One is driven by fear, the other by clarity. One is automatic, the other is awake. Responsive living means engaging with life as a dialogue, not a battleground. It means listening before acting, observing before concluding, feeling before labeling. It is not passivity, it is precision. It's the soft, steady power of showing up on purpose. So instead of surviving unconsciously, you begin evolving consciously. You let go of the armor that no longer fits. You embrace the stillness that guides your next move. You stop resisting who you are becoming. Because what you resist persists. But what you integrate transforms. And that, truly, is the only way forward. It is conscious, aligned responsiveness.